Move on to the approval of the minutes, March 17th, 2022.
Motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
I'd like to abstain. I was out of town last month.
So before we move on to the first item, I want to say that if anybody wishes to make a comment tonight on one of the agenda items, please pick up a card from the door, the table up there by the door, with a blue card on it, and fill it out and return it to Mark. And when the time comes for the agenda item you have the comment about, he will call your name. If you have a comment that's not one of the agenda items, please fill it out, and when it comes to citizens' comments later on in the meeting, he will call on you. And all of our speakers, we ask you to limit it to 5 minutes. This does not include the applicant, because we have to have time with the applicant and ask questions. So, but please fill out the card and pick up a sheet that will have the protocol for the meetings on the back of it too. We'll move on to item number 3, discussion and public hearing on a site plan for the proposed addition and parking lot associated with the Russian Baptist Church Light of the World, located at 12430 Union Road, 1.6 acres, zoned R-1, Russian Baptist Church Light of the World applicant.
Yes, this is a small church off of the east side of Union Road, east of Everett Road, that section. It goes from Everett to Smith. They're requesting to have an addition that would basically be, this is the existing building. I'll show some pictures in a minute. But this is the addition here, 24 by 48, 25 by 48. Now, the property, the building is currently about 6,000 square feet. To the south, there's a cemetery in this location that's owned by Union Cumberland Presbyterian Church. This church building on this property sits well over 200 feet from Union Road, so it's pretty far back. So the church is really trying to make better use of the existing facility. As far as the staff's understanding of this building is, it's always been used as a church. It was built before 1900, so there's really nothing that complies with our current setbacks or building fire codes. The restrooms are on the basement and in the basement, so obviously they're not handicapped accessible. So what they're trying to do is get an addition that will put the restrooms on the first floor, so it'll be handicapped accessible, have kind of an entrance area, greeting area, and then also to actually develop formalized parking. It was kind of surprising to me. I'd known that building was back there for a long time, but I'd really never been on the property to really look at it. But I guess they've never really had any formalized parking as far as I can tell. So what they're requesting as part of this site plan, in addition to the expansion, is to develop 21 parking spaces with this particular project. Since this building is non-conforming currently, actually the setbacks from side and rear property lines would be 50 feet in this zoning district for a church. And the building currently is 17.4 feet. The expansion will put the building 6.67 feet from the property line, but the property line is the common line with the cemetery. So it's really not expanding toward any existing dwelling units or probably any entities that would have a concern about it. This will have to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals. It's on their agenda for next Wednesday to expand the non-conforming building. So any action taken by the Planning Commission obviously would have to be conditioned on the Board of Zoning Appeals actually approving the special exception to allow the building to be expanded. The reason they're not expanding to the north is topographical. They have a couple applicants here that can talk through this, but this is some of the photographs of the existing site. And you can see it's pretty far off of Union Road. But on the north side of the building, you have kind of this existing situation there, and really the south end, which is closer to the cemetery, lends itself topographically better to the addition, even though it does bring the building closer to the property line. So that's the reason for that. And you can see that currently they just have a drive, kind of a loop, a circular drive that goes around the property, and there's kind of a large open space in the middle. So what they're trying to do is add as much parking as they can, and they feel like they need, at least at this point, based on their congregation size and needs, do it in a phased manner so it's not, they don't want to go out and build a large parking lot at this point because they don't currently have a need for more than the parking spaces shown. In fact, this is more than they need currently based on their current congregation size. So as you all may remember, when we modified our parking and loading section, we did allow the Planning Commission to have some flexibility to basically work with applicants on parking where they could demonstrate that what they need is really what they're showing as opposed to what may be required. Now this, in churches, there's a requirement for one space per 30 square feet of auditorium, but this building's not really set up kind of like a traditional church, so it's another issue with parking as to how do you determine, how you apply that ratio, basically. So the staff is comfortable with the amount of spaces that they are showing at this time. Obviously, if they expand, they'll have to revisit that and potentially request to expand their parking if possible. I mean, the site is pretty limited as far as what they can do in the future, so it is fairly restrictive as far as how much they can grow because it's a relatively small piece of property, just a little bit over an acre. The remaining comments that were at your places, there were 9 comments. I think one of the things that we wanted to get clarification on, and I asked the applicants if they could to try to bring a color version and maybe some material samples of what they're proposing to build the addition out of, because the existing building is pretty much all brick, and I think they're mostly matching that. Maybe all that's brick, I'm not sure, but I was not really clear, and they could probably describe the materials a little bit, but that's kind of a general color rendering of what the addition would look like. And then again, the building is just a kind of a traditional red brick building. So I think that's kind of an overview of this request. It's been a little bit challenging to deal with this one because it is so, I guess, non-conforming and limited on what options they have. So we've met with the representatives a few times to try to figure out what direction to recommend, and this is kind of where they're at this point. So I'll be happy to try to answer any questions if you all have any. And I think, like I said, the applicants are here, and they can go over anything else that you may want to find out about.
Mark, it looks like there, where you said it's 6.6, at 6.67
Yeah.
to the property line?
Yes, sir.
Can a fire truck get around through there?
They won't be coming through there. Basically, this is the route. It's just going to loop around like this. And the fire marshal has looked at this, and he is comfortable with with what they're showing.
Okay.
And this actually this appears to be like a concrete slab that extends over onto the cemetery property. That was actually one of the staff's comments, but it's not. I think it was just trying to show some dimensions, I believe. But this is actually where the addition is, and it would be about 6.67 feet from that cemetery property line if approved.
Mark, item number 9 on your list there, is that a deal breaker to go from the 5,900 square feet to the 9,000 for ours?
That would be a question for the applicant.
Okay.
That's a comment obviously from our fire marshal. The last 8 and 9 were from the fire marshal.
Pretty good,
so-
jump.
Yeah. They are putting in a new hydrant on Union Road as part of this project.
Oh, okay.
As you may remember, there's a little subdivision to the north there that Ray Keeney's doing that came before you all several months ago, and he's got a water line extension along that section of Union Road, so it's kind of all tied together with that. But I know they're putting in a hydrant, depending on where First Utility and feels like they need it, but it would be in front of this piece of property to provide for that kind of fire flow.
Does anybody else have any questions of Mark right now?
I've got one question. As part of this redevelopment of this site, I suspect that old church is probably on a drain field septic system. Do they have sewer available to switch over to First Utility on sewer? Or is it, maybe it's already on sewer, I'd be surprised. And the reason being is that if they're still gonna be on septic,
Oh, yeah, right.
that may be,
You'd have to-
changing some of the parking and the impervious area. It might get into the old drain field, assuming 1900, it was definitely on a drain
Oh,
field.
yeah, definitely. I'm sure the original. They would have to speak to that, but I think that sanitary sewer is available. I know there's two sewer lines on Ray Keeney's property to the north, but the applicants could speak to that.
Sure would be a good time to be able to tie into sewer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially they're gonna have a little more discharge than what they used to have, maybe with these new restrooms, but it might be something that we may want to take a little closer look at. Be a little unusual for this to still be on septic.
Yeah, yeah.
Nobody else have any questions of Mark? Will the applicant please come up and
You'd have to go to the mic there. Yep.
over here? And if you'll also give us your name and a business address.
My name is Greg Lutsenko. My business address is 733 Settlers Pond Way, Knoxville, Tennessee. I'm one of the representatives of the board for the construction project. So I've been working with Mark with sort of the approval. So to answer any of your questions specifically, besides the drain field, we have no record of any drain field, and we haven't had anything scoped out, but we suspect that it's on a drain field that's probably in the middle portion of that property. But in the first discussions that we had, there was that discussion of possibly tying into the sewer, but we're just basically step by step at this point.
Okay.
We're not adding, just to comment, we're not adding any additional bathrooms. The bathrooms in the basement will get abandoned, and we're just moving them up to the upper floor so that our congregation can access the bathrooms from the main floor. And the church is set up probably typical of this era of churches, where you walk in the front door and you're right in the congregation. And so the idea was to get a little bit of a meeting area. So none of that addition area is actually seating area. It's just basically bathrooms and a foyer. It's the idea, yeah. I'm not sure if I've answered all the questions, but if you have any.
Anybody else have any questions?
I had the question about the.
Oh, yes, the hydrant.
Hydrant, well, the
So-
flow to satisfy the 9,000 square feet compared to the 5,900 square feet.
So we'd have to double check. We contacted our surveyor, the firm that's doing the surveying, and they miraculously got back to us today. We got the notes yesterday, and we didn't think we'd get back. And before we entered the meeting, we got a note from them. The tech that's doing the actual drawing, she's gone back. She's talked to Dan Johnson, the fire marshal. She's got all the details in terms of the flow, and she's updated the flow a requirement for the line that would come basically along our property to service our property. So that has been updated. The details of whether or not that's a deal breaker, I can't speak to that without finding out what the
Okay, well,
calculation is.
you've addressed the problem and presented the information to the fire marshal, right?
Yes,
So-
she's been working directly with Dan Johnson, yeah.
So that would be one of the open items that we would leave out here. Thank you.
Greg, the large gable over your entrance, is that stucco or is that a gray brick, or what do you have in mind for that?
We, likely it will be brick, maybe painted brick is what the idea is. It's just, there's so much red of that brick, and the color of the brick, right now, currently, there's some patchwork on the front of the building that we would have to remove when we do this addition. So it's hard to see in the pictures, but there's a white grout line that's faded, obviously, at this point, but it's a red brick. It's just a typical red brick. So we wanted to just give it a little bit of some sort of curb appeal from the street. So just to give a bit of contrast, we thought we'd either paint that brick out white or use a white style brick that would give that detail.
Anybody else have any questions or comments?
Well, one thing on this addition, you'll have to change the stairs, because for it to be handicapped accessible, but I think that's just being used for a visual.
This is just a rendering. The actual plans that have been drawn up by our architect, this is just a rendition to show the original drawings. When we had drawn them, the foyer was arranged a little bit, a little bit differently. And so we've gone back and forth with our church board to say that we'd like a front entrance. The original drawings had the entrance from the side. And so this will be taken up as we get closer to permits. In the actual original drawings, there's a ramp that goes up the side of the building, and there's access by the stage for the wheelchair accessible.
Basically running a ramp around the right side of the
That's
building.
right,
Is that
yeah.
topography, that probably would be the...
That allows for the most
the easiest place. Okay,
convenient
great.
access, yeah.
We're glad you're able to use kind of an old, kind of semi-historic building and put it to use, so.
Any more questions or comments? Mark, will they need to come back with some of these changes they're talking about, or?
Well, it's whatever you all are comfortable with. If you feel like they need to, that can be your prerogative. Or if you feel comfortable with what they're presented, and then we can address these at the staff level. Most of these are really minor to me.
Okay.
Obviously, the Board of Zoning Appeals has to approve this for it to have an opportunity to be built, but the other items here, in fact, he kind of handed me this before the meeting, and just skimming over it, looks like most of them they've kind of already
Okay.
addressed.
I can't
so.
see a reason to bring them back to the planning commission. I would like to delineate that gable as brick. I mean, I'd like to, if that's your intention, and
Yeah.
I think we'd like to make sure there's
Be
no
clear
ambiguity
on
there.
that.
And
Yep. Okay.
Otherwise, we'd like to send it to the next step of the process. So
Wonderful.
with that being said, I'll be happy to make a motion to approve the site plan subject to items 1 through 9.
You want to add a 10 for the brick?
For the brick, yeah.
Delineate the gable.
Yes, do that, please.
And Mark, is that okay if we send a drawing with it actually labeled as white brick and red brick? That suffices for, okay.
Also, something a little bit more clear on the handicap, which would be number 7.
But that doesn't have to come back to us. You
No,
can
okay.
deal with that at a staff level.
Yes.
So the number 7 was to show the size of the space? Yeah,
No,
okay, that's already
seven basically
complete.
deals with your ADA
Yes.
access. It
Route.
deals with your handicap spots, as well as, I think that's kind of all-encompassing, to also deal with the ramp, however you guys decide to run the ramp around the building, just to be able to get folk in
The route to
wheelchair.
the building, make sure it's not steeper than 12 to 1, that kind of stuff is what we're talking about.
Okay. Fair enough.
Get you up front, so.
That's probably better as item 11, because the two items on handicap talk about handicap compact parking signage, and the other one talks about handicap parking as well. So if we're talking about the ramp to the building, we probably.
Well, I mean, I think if handicap parking meets all applicable requirements, to me, that's part of the access. I mean, it's all-encompassing, but if we want to do a number 11 on there, I'll be happy to amend my motion.
I think it makes
So-
it clear.
Yeah.
Do you want to do that?
Yeah, if that makes everybody feel more comfortable. So we'll add item number 11, just that has to do with the handicap ramp. Make sure you meet those, and there are some ADA standards that has to do with the slope.
Okay, perfect.
I'll second the motion.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you for coming in.
Thank you very
Appreciate
much.
And good luck. Item number 4, discussion on the site plan for the proposed facade update and vertical showroom addition to the Tommy's Solemn Shop. Original site plan was approved as Moses Water Sports. 11470 Outlet Drive, 6.83 acres, zoned OD-RE/E, urban engineering applicant. And this is for discussion purposes only, Mark, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, the applicant wanted to get some feedback on what they wanted to do with the building elevation before they moved on with the site plan modifications, because some of the parking lot and some of that area that we looked at last month with the rough grading for the Tommy's Water Sports is also going to be part of that site plan. But basically, this item involves a request to add a vertical showroom kind of here on the back side of the building, on the south side. The interstate is, down to the south. There's a piece of property in between the interstate and their property that's owned by Buddy Gregg. But basically, that's where the addition is proposed. It's about 1,200 square feet in total. And then some facade enhancements on the southwest corner of the building. So that's generally what they're requesting. There's a couple of things that are changed a little bit since the packet went out. And first of all, the original building, as you all know, was a 16,000 square foot building, and it was approved as part of Moses Water Sports. That was the original applicant. Since that time, that project was bought by Tommy's Slalom Shop out of Michigan, and so they've been looking at making some changes to both the site and the building. And this vertical showroom and the facade modifications is some things that they would like to request. This is what basically was included in the original submittal. This is looking at the top elevation is the north elevation. That's going to be facing Outlet Drive. You can see that vertical showroom in the back that protrudes above. And then you got the east elevation below, and that's going to be facing toward Top Golf. Let me go ahead and show the elevations that were in the packet. This one is the south elevation, and here's that vertical showroom, which is mostly glass. And you can see the kind of the facade modifications here on the southwest corner. And then the west side of the building that would face toward Buddy Gregg. In looking at this with the applicant last week, we talked about some modifications. They are working on a facility actually in Michigan, the home state for this company. And it actually has more brown. First of all, the requested addition actually does increase the percentage of masonry as opposed to what was originally approved with the Moses Water Sports project. From roughly, and Richard, you can correct me if I'm wrong if this is still accurate, but from roughly 64% to 72% masonry with what they're proposing. So this is an alternate that they would like to have you all look at and give consideration to. So the area here above the entrance, again, this is the north elevation looking toward Outlet Drive. It was stucco ephes on what was originally approved. This is kind of a metal product that they've used in some other locations. Let me show you a building. This is kind of one of the buildings that you can see that brown. And I think that's a type of new metal type product that they're trying to use at some of their newer sites. So it's more of an earth tone than the blue that was originally approved, which to me personally I think is a little bit more in line with our architectural design standards. You can see really on the east elevation, not a whole lot changed there. Again, you can kind of see the difference when I toggle between these two. This was what was originally requested. It was in the packet. You had these kind of blue ephes areas and above this area here, and then on the edge of the building. And then those are going to this kind of brown metal type material. The rest of it's pretty much the same. But that's what they would like to get some feedback from you all on. If you were comfortable with this, if you think the alternate elevations are, better than what they originally requested, and just that kind of feedback so that they can move forward one way or the other with what they'd like to do with the building and then the site itself. So with that, I'll try to answer any questions you had. The architect for the project is here. If you all have specific questions for him, he can probably review what they're wanting to do more clearly than I can, but that's kind of an overview.
I'll start with a question for you, Mark. I'm sure you probably talked about the trees, and there's not going to be any change in the trees on the property or
Not with the addition, because it's already in an area where there's the tree covers been removed. There could be later on with some of the site, and y'all looked at some grading over here on this adjacent property, and I'm sure they'll be doing some improvements in that area at some point pretty soon. But that'll be coming back to you all. There's not any tree cover that would be removed south of that. I think the applicant's pretty clear that, having tree cover in that area is very important to the town. This particular project shouldn't affect that.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions for Mark?
Mark, is that material you're talking about with the brown, the metal, would that be the same thing that they've got on ORNL Federal Credit Union?
I don't know, Richard.
One panel, it looks pretty similar
to that.
I think it's
not an
a
expert
metal
on-
with a vinyl wood grain.
I kind of
Like vinyl
looked
wrap
at
wood
it.
grain. It kind of has a wood grain look to it.
Yeah, I looked at it on the internet.
I
It
actually
looks-
brought a sample.
Right.
Great.
Yeah, so it does look like wood.
Texture.
It does. They're great.
I think that the credit union has a little more of a cedar hue
It
to it.
probably
It's pretty
is.
popular
It's kind
right
of a
now.
newer product.
Matter of
that-
fact, 35 North had, that
For
what
some
looks like the big
accent.
barrel on top.
A little darker.
Yeah.
A little darker.
it's-
So I think
it's-
this is definitely preferable than the blue.
Yeah.
We had one of the credit unions that wanted a lot of bright blue, and it doesn't really fit in the earth tones. So we definitely encourage you to go this route with this wood grain, the metal product.
They would like to.
Can you please come up to the microphone? And we need you to give us your name and a business address.
My name is Richard Calise. I'm with Studio 4 Design. It's 414 Clinch Avenue, Knoxville, Tennessee.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I think what came out of this question, now we've talked about these earth tones, going back to their facility in Michigan, where it wraps the side of the building. Want to know if you would entertain looking at that end of the building and just wrapping, very similar to this, the same type of look, where instead of it being a monument icon in the middle, it wraps around the whole end of the building where their showroom is. And that'll give a more aesthetic pleasing look to that versus highs and lows.
So you're talking about removing the tower and it's more of a consistent height like this? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, go back, Mark, one more. Yeah, see on the front, one more, go back to the front facade. See how you have the front element, which was blue, and now we're proposing doing the gray with the wood tones? Imagine that whole assembly going around and wrapping the building on the right side.
Like a horizontal band.
Yes.
Okay.
So it looked more like the Michigan showroom.
No, I always see that. You still want to get this kind of this blue accent stripe in here?
That's part of their branding. It's a very it minimizes the amount of blue that we had from what was previously approved. So they want to bring that in because that's part of their logo.
Yeah, you got to be, just a word of caution, if, it could be that blue stripe gets identified as a sign. And then all of a sudden, you've used up your signage allowance on that blue stripe. So we may want to dig into a little deeper with the staff on how that blue kind of fits into things as
Okay.
far as, it's not just an accent anymore, it's more of an eye-catching thing. And I'm just trying to warn you, all of a sudden, you're like, oh, wait a second, here's, we thought we had X number of square feet eligible for signage, and now we don't because of this. And so I'll let staff deal with that maybe at another time. It looks like your tower, I guess that's kind of the Carvana, so you could stack 3 boats in there. Is that
Correct.
kind of the idea? You have like some sort of hoist or elevator system or some way to be able to raise and lower it and put boats in there?
That is correct.
I think this is actually pretty cool, and I think it is an iconic feature, and it's pretty exciting. I do get concerned, and I'm going to kind of do the same little soapbox speech that I did to when Moses was in front of us. Rita talked about the trees on your property, but there's also trees out in the right-of-way that are on the TDOT right-of-way, and those are protected trees as well. And as much as you'd like to increase the visibility, because I see kind of the object of what you're trying to do here. So you're trying to say, hey, I'm in the boat sales business, or especially the wakeboard and ski boat business. And so those trees, we take it real seriously. So what we don't want to do is we don't want to see all of a sudden those trees on a weekend out in front of your place in the TDOT right away start disappearing because you're trying to enhance. I think it's possible to maybe do some pruning in the wintertime and be able to that sort of thing. But anybody that's built along a right of way, matter of fact, Topgolf, I kind of picked on Topgolf with the exact same soapbox. So, but we do take that real seriously. So those trees out in the right of way are not your trees, and you don't have the right to be able to go clear them out just because you want to try to enhance your visibility. But I do like the direction you're going with. I'm definitely open-minded to taking that band, this wood grain band, and trying to continue your corporate theme. I think that makes sense, and I actually kind of like the glass tower. I think it's pretty cool looking.
Thank you.
So.
Yeah, I was going to say, we looked at the site in wintertime, and you can visibly see that corner of the site with the trees, the existing trees that are there. No trees have been removed. So will be visible in the wintertime through winter.
No, but your sales manager is going to be like, gosh, it sure would be nice to go out there and cut down all those trees when nobody's looking. But I'm just telling you.
We're looking.
No, no.
But we are looking. And I know you're the architect of record. It's hard for you to convey how serious we are about this. But you definitely need to convey it. Maybe when you guys come back for a official site plan review, then maybe there may be somebody from Tommy's that's going to be present. But we're real serious about it because obviously we've had issues with it in the past, and it's challenging.
Understood.
There's a reason why we have a tree protection ordinance.
Understood.
Anybody else have any questions or comments?
Do you have any questions or comments for us?
Not at this time. I appreciate your time tonight to kind of take a look at this and get your feedback on it before we move too far down the road from a design standpoint.
And
But,
have we given you enough direction?
Yes.
There was Moses came back to us and had some issues with some fencing that faces Outlet Drive. Are y'all still proposing the same fencing or
That is
enhancement of that fencing? Because that was a little bit of an area that you start kind of getting on thin ice with some of that fencing out there. So we just make sure that's well presented, and there's a good understanding of either following the plan that's already been approved, and if you're going to make some changes to that, just make sure you get that information to the staff. I know that's more of a civil design issue versus the architecture, but we don't want to hold you up. We want you guys to get rolling and get open for business. But I do want to bring that up, that there were some issues that we had with some fencing changes.
No, I appreciate that. And, the new owner is aware of the fencing requirement on Outlet Drive.
Okay.
Are you, got any more questions, Mark, or?
I don't.
Richard, are you kind of, is I guess everybody on board with taking this wood grain metal and maybe expanding it above and beyond what's even on this rendering here? I mean, I'm comfortable with it, but I just want to, because I guess he needs the feedback before he goes back and kind of redesigns this building.
No, I think that looks good. I think it makes the showroom and the front of the building stand out more.
Okay.
Spend a little time with talking about that blue with staff and make sure you don't get yourself in a catch-22 on that blue. It may be okay. So,
Yeah, it's just, we were looking at,
Yeah.
we minimized the amount of blue that was there, so.
Okay.
Yeah, appreciate your time. Any other questions?
Well, sir, we appreciate it, Richard. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to item number 5. Discussion and public hearing on a zoning map amendment rezoning request from General Commercial District C-1 to Rural Single-Family Residential District R-1 for a portion of .82 acres of the existing parcel 069, tax map 151, 13013, Kingston Pike, 1.82 acres. JMB FP Investment Company applicant.
Okay, out in the west part of Kingston Pike, fast-paced healthcare, Urgent Health has kind of finished up here recently. They've got a temporary CO out there. And the property that they bought is 1.82 acres, but they really don't need that much acreage. It's pretty much what they've developed is all they need. So what they're requesting to do is re-subdivide 0.82 acres out and then rezone that north portion from general commercial C1 to rural residential R1. In this part of town, there's several parcels in this area that is zoned general commercial all the way from Kingston Pike back to Fleener. As everyone probably knows, Fleener Road is, depending on what part you're on, is pretty substandard and not really conducive to office or commercial type traffic. So really the predominant built environment in that area right now for Fleener Road is rural residential. You got Cool Springs Estates, which is R1. Cool Springs itself is open space residential, which is based on the R1 density. So the requested zoning district is compatible with the existing built environment along Fleener Road for that area. It is not compatible with the future land use map. Several of those parcels in that area have medium density residential as the land use on the future land use map. From the staff's perspective, that probably needs to be looked at and to see if that might need to be updated or modified. It's just something that I think isn't only specific to this property. The staff is comfortable with what they're requesting as far as the rezoning, but the future land use map, I think, through this section is something that in the near future we need to probably look at. Same way when we were talking about the Williams property on Evans and Virtue and some of those areas there that were open space cluster, but the actual built kind of development was really not that. We really kind of needed to look at that and update it. And I think the same is the case here. The medium density residential land use was shown there when we updated the plan in 2012 as kind of a transitional type of development to buffer the lower density residential to the north from commercial development. And maybe it needs to stay that, I don't know. But it just is not really compatible with the current built environment in that general area, and probably something that we as a commission need to look at in the near future. So Again, the staff is comfortable with what they're requesting as far as the rezoning, and we do recommend approval of Resolution 22-08, which recommends approval of Ordinance 22-08 to rezone the north part of that tract from C1 to R1. So if anybody has any questions, I'll try to answer those for you.
Mark, I have a couple of observations on this. Typically, we've got a buffer that is designated between C1 and any kind of non-commercial or non-office uses. And how would that be handled at the platting process? I assume what the ultimate objective here is to subdivide this property and create a residential lot that would be accessed off of Fleener Road.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
But there's a couple of discussion items that I think need to be thought about. Is number one, the buffer. The other discussion item is connectivity. We try to encourage connectivity, but in certain scenarios, I'm not necessarily sure having connectivity from a parking lot in with a doctor's office and some sort of residential really makes the most sense in that area, especially due to this kind of the substandard nature of Fleener Road.
Yeah.
So that's something that probably would have to be discussed. And being that if it's zoned back to residential, site plan's not going to come back to us. I mean, somebody could just, however,
Build a house.
the plat would come back to us.
Yeah.
And then the other kind of observation that I have is there are some very large oak trees in that, which, as being zoned commercial, are somewhat protected. Not that you can't cut them down when it's zoned commercial. You can present a plan, which is a tree replacement plan that says, hey, I'm going to cut this tree down when it's zoned commercial, and then I'm going to replace it with the following trees. But when it's zoned residential, you're eligible to go through and clear cut lot line to lot line when it's zoned residential. And there are some large ones. Obviously, somebody's going to build a house on it. You got to cut some trees down. That's just part of it. However, there are some gigantic oak trees on that, and I'm just wondering if there's a creative way to at least protect some of those oak trees instead of just clear cutting lot line to lot line. And then all of a sudden, the folks that are back there on Fleener Road, then they just kind of basically now they've got a view corridor straight to Kingston Pike looking next to the medical office building. And I think we just got to be careful thinking about automatically saying, yeah, that's great, let's downzone it to residential. There are some ramifications that could occur with going to residential.
I would be more in favor of a residence with landscaping, with attractive landscaping, than a business on that street that has cut down the trees and replaced them with a certain number of trees per our ordinances.
Well, I don't disagree.
So I understand exactly what you're saying, but I think in balance, the end product that would be more conducive to our neighborhood in that area than not making it residential. So I'd be inclined to support the residential.
Well, there's two things that happen if it stays C1, you're going to have Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, I think 35 feet. It's a 35-foot buffer that would be up against Fleener Road. So if it stays C1, you're going to have a 35-foot buffer, and that's going to protect some of those existing trees. The other thing is I seriously doubt that this planning commission or the Board of Mayor and Aldermen would support putting any kind of commercial traffic or even office traffic on Fleener Road being in the condition that it's in. So any kind of commercial development that would occur would have to use the existing parking lot where the what's it called, Fast Pace?
Yeah.
Would have to use that parking lot. And so I guess what I'm saying is that we just need to be real thoughtful about automatically rezoning it, and then like I said, you could then clear all the way to that Fleener Road property line versus if it was commercial, or as it stands right now, you couldn't clear within 35 feet of the right of way. And again, residential makes sense. It does make sense here. It's just that there's in residential, the buffer now is going to be moved from Fleener Road. Basically, it's going to be moved halfway to Kingston Pike, and then you're going to have essentially a 35-foot buffer that's going to have to be dedicated either in a plat or in some sort of a site plan note. But normally when the town does this, the town's going to want it in a plat. So it's a as of record buffer, and typically it's on the C1 property, not on the residential property. And so there's just some things to kind of think through here of what's going to happen as part of this rezoning. Again, I support the zoning. It does make sense here. There's just a few dominoes that may fall that may be unintended when it gets redeveloped, even as a single family.
So everything else around it, though, is designated general commercial at this point?
Yeah, I mean, it's pink all the way back to Fleener Road. That's been that way for decades.
Probably since 1980. It was just one of those things that they just said, hey, let's
Yeah.
just, it was arbitrary then, and it is what it
Honesty,
is.
in my opinion, if
Yeah.
But it looks like there's two houses next to it.
there
are,
are.
yep.
Two parcels.
It's, the
There are a couple
existing
residential.
build environment is definitely low-density residential. And frankly, those properties shouldn't be zoned commercial all the way back to Fleener Road. But, you know, that's the way they are, you know, and it's kind of it probably ought to be some kind of a residential district through that, at least for the north portion of those lots, to kind of transition to a much lower density to the north.
So Mark, if it's rezoned to commercial, what's your best guess of then where the new 35-foot buffer would be located, and then what it would look like?
The Fast Pace has a detention basin on the north side of their development, and so they'd have to be just to the north of that.
You think, is there enough room back? Of course, we don't, right now it's kind of somewhat of an arbitrary line of where the zoning line is, so we're really not sure until we see a survey or a plat of what
They've
it's going to.
submitted a plat, but I'm not exactly sure, you know, where that basin falls in relation to that, but that's something that would have to be provided, yeah, is the 35-foot buffer.
The other thing that we might want to think about is, I don't know if the applicant directly to the east has submitted anything to the town, but
No.
I suspect that it appears that that's going to be redeveloped. And I don't want to hold this applicant's feet to the fire for something based upon what your next door neighbor may or may not do, but all of a sudden you're going to create a 35-foot buffer for the next door neighbor that wasn't there before. I assume you know what I'm talking about, the church on the property directly to the east. So
Yeah.
So this makes sense. I'm not opposed to this at all. I do have some loyalty to the homeowners back there in Cool Springs. They had some concerns that they expressed to me, and I'm trying to express those concerns. So I'm just trying to think about again the ramifications of this, and you know, kind of how we're going to deal with some of these issues, and you know, the other applicant to the east, and you know, the large trees and the buffer and connectivity.
Yeah, we talked about connectivity when the Fast Pace came in, and I think the feeling was it just didn't make sense for that particular project, given the condition of Fleener Road.
You'd actually present a cut through.
To
By
cut,
doing it.
yeah.
That's
So-
not what we're
And
after.
I don't think anybody wants that. I suspect Fast Pace doesn't want that. They don't want folks, you know, zipping through their parking lot. So, but these are things that we should talk
Yeah,
about.
no, absolutely, yeah. And you know me with trees and connectivity, I support both strongly. So yeah, I think you make very good points.
I'd like to make a motion.
Wait a minute, we need to hear from the applicant.
Okay.
I'm sorry, just one quick thing. Tim Dunaway with J&B Investment Company, 325 Aaron Drive in Knoxville. I just wanted to make sure you understood that the required buffer may not be on the plat yet, Mark, but we'll put it wherever it needs to be. If it needs to be on the commercial portion, we'll include enough property on the commercial portion in the front to
okay.
get that covered. It'll reduce that lot a little bit, but it's a single-family residential.
Yeah.
And I would also say that's still a very large lot. Anybody that bought that for a single-family house, they're going to want to keep those trees too. They'd probably situate their house where they can keep those trees.
I mean, quite frankly, you could go down to 20,000 square feet, and you're going to be quite a bit bigger than that. So, I mean, you
Right.
know, let's say you're going to be 3/4 of an acre. So,
If it was,
you're going to be bigger than even what the minimums are. So, I think all this makes sense. What I'd really like to see is is instead of having to go through and revegetate and create a new buffer on area that's already been cleared, it sure would be nice to, if there's some of that mature vegetation back there behind that
Right.
detention pond, that you guys could say, hey, let's try to include this, and that way you've already got a mature buffer
That's what I was
back there.
suggesting, is we'll add the 35 feet behind the pond to whatever we need to.
And
We
you
just
maybe
need to be, we need to be larger than an acre on the C1 lot to meet zoning.
That's right.
So
Right.
we're
How
going in
much
the right
to- How much
direction.
total do you have? You got a,
It's
1.8.
1.82, and we're making
Yeah.
it over an acre for the fast-paced lot, and the remaining will be less. And that's another reason we couldn't subdivide it, because it'd be less than an acre.
Right.
That's in the C zoning, so.
I mean, quite frankly, doing a 35-foot little buffer is not going to use up that many, overall square footage, just, I mean,
No.
that lot's maybe.
That
what,
lot will still be sellable
it's
for
still
us.
maybe 125,
Gets the tree buffer
150, yeah.
really established and saves whatever big trees are in that area. And it's still a plenty big lot for a single family. If it was a multifamily or high density, I'd be more worried about it like you are, but it's one house. They're not going to build a huge house on that road, I don't think. There's a lot of small houses around the immediate adjacent area.
I think it's a good fit. Tim, you might want to think about your access to sewer. Their easiest access to sewer is going to be out going by fast pace.
We've
But
provided that
that's
already.
Where that sewer line is not necessarily, at least on your north boundary, it's not real close to you. It's a little tough to get to.
Yeah,
But it
we-
might be easier to give them an easement through fast pace to be able to tie into your sewer. It
It's-
sounds like you've already started
It's
thinking
done,
about
yeah.
that.
We've
Okay.
already run the sewer up. We had to go that way for our own sewer, so we provided an
Okay.
easement and a junction box for that lot to have access
Yeah,
already.
we looked at that when we reviewed their preliminary plat
Right.
because they couldn't subdivide it like that. You have to have an acre if it's in R1, if
Well,
it's not
especially,
on
yeah, if you're trying to go
sanitary
septic, you
sewer.
got to at least have an acre. So,
That's right. Yeah.
I mean, sewer's all over that area. It's just trying to get it to
Yeah,
that lot.
Exactly. And we had to go up there anyway, so we just went ahead and created it since it
Yeah.
was something we were going to hope to subdivide and sell, and it makes it more attractive.
Mark, what do you think's the best way to try to explain to the folks next door that, hey, you now are going to have a 35-foot buffer? I mean, the reality is if they're first to market and they're here, they're submitting their plan and they're rezoning prior to a neighbor, they've got vested rights in it, so it just kind of is what it is, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's rezoned to R1.
Okay.
Whatever happens on that property, they'll have to provide the
35
appropriate
feet.
buffer, yeah.
Okay.
Mark, it's not specific to the rezoning, so, but one question I have is you talked about a near-term look at that land use.
Yeah.
What's
Yeah.
your idea on that? So, you said near-term, is that,
I
how
would say
near
in
is
the next-
near-term?
Yeah, I mean, it's up to you all as whether you want it to be a immediate priority. I think it's something that we could pretty easily deal with in a fairly quick manner. But you all may feel that the land use is there is appropriate. I don't know. I think it probably ought to be a lower density residential, frankly.
We almost did it before, whenever we were doing.
Yeah, the Watt Road.
Watt Road,
Yeah,
but
that's
we
right.
just, I mean,
This
you
is
have to
gonna be-
stop somewhere when you're doing something like that.
This is gonna be kind of a catalyst to do something with it, because when that turns yellow, basically.
Yeah, I think so, because that's what I would probably recommend for that, is low-density residential.
So something in the next couple of months?
Yeah, if you all want, I can definitely do that, yeah, if
Well,
that's,
I think we
I
ought
mean,
to.
keep in mind, if you make the land use, and this is way premature to talk about this, but if you make that land use plan too punishing for somebody will say, well, I'm just going to stick with my C1 zoning. So you just think about,
Right.
and we'll discuss that at a later date, but it's something to digest.
yeah, because the fact of the matter is, no matter what the land use shows, unless they're rezoning it, somebody could develop it as C1 all the way back to Fleener Road.
That's what-
I mean, you still got to provide buffers. I mean, you got to provide all the items in the municipal code. But I'm just food for thought.
Yep.
Any more questions or comments? Are you,
No, but I will offer this up while I'm at the microphone. One of my owners, I'm on the item 6 as well. I represent those folks too. Same company. He came into town today, and after seeing the staff recommendations I put in front of him about that item on number 6, he said just withdraw it. And I didn't get really a chance to mention that to Mark to get it off the agenda for you all. But I will save your time even opening that one up tonight if you prefer. We're going to just withdraw that and retain our Loop Road access. Okay.
We're gonna, the applicant would like to withdraw item number 6 in its entirety.
We got to finish
With 5
number.
first.
Let's finish 5.
So
And I
we're-
apologize for
Yeah,
jumping.
like, the reason means that'll have to be an action item.
Jumping protocol there, but
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
okay.
it would. But on 5, did somebody make a motion? John, did you make a
John
motion?
started.
I started, but we hadn't finished with the.
Okay.
I make a motion for the approval of the application of the zoning map rezoning from the subject property from C1 to R1, as requested.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, now, item number 6. Do I need to go ahead and read that, or just,
You can read it into the record, and we'll just note that the applicant has
The
requested.
point of
to-
order, do we need to, since it's officially submitted and been advertised, do we need to deal with it as your recommendation for?
Yeah, I
instance?
think I'd just read it and then just take an action on it based
Okay.
on what the applicant has stated. That's probably the cleanest way to do it.
okay, item number 6, review of a request for a recommendation of approval to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen for a variance of 291 feet from the distance from the intersections and distance between driveways requirement for arterial streets as provided for in the driveway and other access ways ordinance for an access onto Concord Road for proposed office building at parcel BA010, tax map 153.5 acres, Broadway Investment Company, LLC applicant.
In light of the applicant's statement about withdrawal, I propose we withdraw it from the agenda.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you. Item number 7, discussion and public hearing on the FY 2023 CIP.
Jump out of this PowerPoint and into the other one. And I'll just take a second here.
Unusual place for you to be standing.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, thank you, Planning Commission. You know, I'm going to start getting a complex. Every time I ever talk about the budget in a public forum, I get a huge crowd. So but I appreciate you all sticking around for this tonight. I really do. Thank you, Tammy.
State your name and address first, please.
My name and address, I'm David Smoke, and I live here at 11408 Municipal Center Drive.
Most of the time.
That's right. All right, so tonight, Mark, I didn't have the clicker, so you're going to have to keep up with me, but I'm going to go relatively quickly through this CIP. The board has met twice already, the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, on our CIP, which is our capital investment program, and we wanted to present this to you tonight. Part of state law requires us to come before the Planning Commission and get a recommendation from the Commission to be able to send to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. Our draft budget is going to be going to them next Friday, week from Friday, for them to review for the 2-reading process throughout the month of May. So what is the capital investment program? This is really us to be able to look ahead. We do a 6-year process for capital projects. Anything over $25,000 that's a large project, we put in our capital account. We look at parks, roads, sidewalks, land acquisition, you name it. Any large purchase is what we're putting there. And then why do we do the CIP? Well, this really helps us review and look at what are our priorities, what are we trying to get accomplished in the future. It also allows us to really look at the cost of each project thoroughly and look at the maintenance of those efforts to make sure that we can maintain and keep our operating budget consistent as well. Why do we do the CIP? CIP provides for funding for projects on a priority basis, and it helps us keep us within our financial bounds. We also look at grants. We get grant opportunities sometimes for our CIP, and so we want to make sure that we're covering all of those as well. So how do we develop our CIP? One is, as I mentioned earlier, the staff gets together, we prioritize projects, and then as we go forward, we get with the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, and they prioritize our projects, and then we come to the Planning Commission and get some recommendations from you before it eventually goes to the budget process. And again, as I mentioned earlier, this is a little bit different in that we are looking at getting a recommendation from the Planning Commission. This is the only budget process that we actually do get a recommendation from the Planning Commission on. So with our CIP, we break it down into 3 or 4 different categories. One is general government, and I'm going to start with that one first. So Mark, I have to go a couple slides ahead. First that we have, and I'm going to focus on FY23. So this is the start of the year, July 1st through June 30th. We call that FY23 because it's going to end in the 23 fiscal year. And I'm going to talk about all the projects that are going to be happening, that we project to be happening in FY23. I think in your packet you have the whole 6-year CIP. I'm not going to go through all those projects, but we can certainly talk about any of them if you'd like to. If there's anything that you want to grab me and catch me on as I'm going through it, please just stop and ask a question as we go through each project. So the first one is our Campbell Station Inn building improvements. This is a project that we have done a lot with the property. We've done a lot with the outside of the property, but we have not gone in and renovated the inside yet. So we have $250,000 allocated to do the inside renovations for next year. In our land acquisition, this is something we've been doing for the last 10 to 12 years, is putting money aside for future land acquisitions. That could be for parkland, that could be for right-of-way, different things that we may need. Again, we're going to project to put in $300,000 in FY 2023. We also are looking at renovating our town hall. Town hall's been here for 32 years now. We've been filling it out with people, all sorts of places, and putting up little walls and closets to try to fit people in. So we're trying to make that a more efficient space. So right now we are actually just hired an architect to start that process. And what we plan on for next year is to get construction documents and then hopefully start construction as well in FY23. Little Turkey Creek Greenway.
David?
Yes, sir.
Just quickly, is it envisioned to be all internal modifications or any additional type?
All internal.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Trying to keep it as cost effective as possible. Yes.
The $1 million, is that federal money? Is that some sort of grant, the ARPA?
So yes, so the $1 million we have planned is from ARPA, and that's the American Rescue Plan Act. That's actually a separate fund altogether. The town receives $7 million, or will receive $7 million in ARPA funds. The bulk of that is being spent on stormwater improvements, and then we will actually get some grant monies, hopefully from TDEC for that, which will help us expand and really get even more money out of the ARPA funds. So we certainly, we're shooting for $1 million on this, but we have not got the architectural drawings yet. As soon as we do, then we'll have a much better figure on what that cost may be.
You need to keep your little interior designer in your office under control, otherwise this budget's going to get way out of whack.
She has been very excited, and I know you have to deal with that at home sometimes.
I have got a lot of experience with that interior designer. She gets a little carried away, too.
All right, our next project is Little Turkey Creek Greenway. This is one that is going to really connect two bridges together. One is from Brookmere subdivision, and then it's going to run about, I think it is 600 feet or so to the south to the bridge that is at Sheffield. It's all on the east side of the creek, so it's really a beautiful piece that we're working on there. We already have engineering underway, but we project $600,000 for next year for construction. And then as you get to Sheffield subdivision, then we look to continue that project all the way down to Turkey Creek Road. So again, it's a smaller piece to connect in there, around $165,000, but that'll then get that greenway connected all the way from Kingston Pike all the way down to Turkey Creek Road when that gets finished.
Is that bridge being replaced
Which one?
at Sheffield?
That is not being replaced.
No, it's in good shape.
I thought there was problems with the rust.
Now, the rest is on the other bridge.
Are we talking about pedestrian bridge or vehicular bridge?
Pedestrian.
That bridge ain't even that old, is it?
No,
No.
no, it's been painted, it's black.
So, but the Turkey Creek Bridge that goes over, which is actually Little Turkey Creek, does it have enough room to get a sidewalk on it?
I believe, does it have one, Mark? I think it
does
has
have
one.
Okay.
It's got one on it.
Okay,
It does.
When they improved that a few years ago.
Okay, good.
We just need to connect that small piece to go
Right.
from
It's just not-
Sheffield to get
It
there.
just don't have
The sidewalk between, yeah, right,
Right,
it doesn't
right.
go anywhere right now. Another big thing that we've been looking at in the last couple of years is mid-block pedestrian crossings, and so we've got a couple more planned for next year. One is on Mcphee Road and one is on Grigsby Chapel Road. Again, the exact locations of these have not been decided yet. We just wanted to kind of show a visual of where that could be and what it may look like. If you've been out to Grigsby Chapel and seen that, or on the one on Watt Road, both are very visible. Make sure pedestrians are safer as they cross. And so that's been certainly a priority of ours over the last couple of years. Another one is Turkey Creek Greenway study. This is a pretty difficult stretch. We just talked about it a little bit, but we really want to try to extend our greenway from where it ends right now at the Bricksworth subdivision, heading towards Virtue Road. So this is really just a study to see what it would take and how much area it would take to make that happen. And when we get that recommendation back, then we can go to the board and planning commission and talk through what those options are.
That's the only remaining link, right?
That's a big link, and that would really connect, kind of east-west and north-south through that area. But it's a pretty difficult section, so that's why we wanted to get some engineering on that and find out exactly what we could do.
A lot of fun.
David, I've got
Do
a
that on
couple-
bike.
Yes, that's right.
Sidewalk
That's
and
right.
Run down that hill as fast as I can.
David, I've
Yes,
got
sir.
a couple of questions just on the rationale in your thinking.
Yes.
Between 23 and 24, the FY 23 and 24.
Okay?
You got the underpass at North Turkey Creek at 350 for total. Is that total design build?
Yes.
And then the rationale between the Sonia Drive sidewalk in 24 versus the Greenway in 23. To me, personally, off the top of my head, without hearing anything more about it, was looking at a sidewalk being probably maybe a year ahead of a Greenway.
Which Greenway are you talking about, Ed?
Little Turkey Creek Greenway,
Okay.
the one at 600, in other words, the 600,000 maybe going to 24 and the 500 going back to 23.
So what we're doing right now is we're actually designing the Sonia Drive sidewalk, and then what our plan is, we have money in this year, the budget in we're currently, to
So
both
it's not really zero this year. 22's got money for the design.
design and right-of-way
And
acquisition.
right-of-way, okay.
Correct.
That's
So
the
what we
rationale.
anticipate is it's going to take us a year to go and get all the parcels that we may
You
need
answered my question.
to then construct it in 24. That's right.
You just can't get that off the table.
Sorry about that. All right, so next area that we focus on is parks and recreation. We've done quite a bit with our parks and recreation over the last couple of years. So we have a few other projects that we're looking at being able to do here in FY23. First is as the Biddle Farm project gets really built out, and hopefully this piece of it gets built next year, we want to look at including a restroom building and also upgrading the lighting along Brooklawn Drive. So we have $500,000 allocated for that. There's also a Mayor Bob Leonard Park field reconstruction. Now, this is going to be grant, we're looking for grant funding from the state on this, so if we don't get that, this may be able to push out another year. But what we're looking at doing is converting our baseball field on the east side to a rectangular field, and then taking our west baseball field and really ramping that up and modifying that and making it a little bit bigger than what it is today. So that is, again, about a $1.3 million project. We hope to get about $500,000 from the state in TDEC grants if we can. Next up is a town hall playground restroom. Blue Cross Blue Shield playground behind us has been extremely, people are loving it. Kids are out there every day. If you see them after school gets out, it's been really popular. So what we're looking at doing is adding a restroom out there. During the day, it's not a big deal. They can come to town hall, but on the weekends when we're not open, that's a little bit more difficult.
I will say that I have been pleasantly surprised at the, every time I'm up here, there are cars and people over there. And I will say I'm surprised.
Well, it's been a little hidden gem, and I think the parents that certainly for younger kids during the early morning hours, they'll be out here. You can start seeing them now with the weather getting nicer. They're really out here quite a bit. I saw them in the snow last year. Saw them. It was raining outside. Kids are out here playing. I mean, it's really interesting, but it's great. It's been a great park for us.
It certainly seems to be.
So another thing we have to start doing is taking care of and replacing some of the things that we did about 10 years ago. And one of these is our first turf replacements that we're going to have at Mayor Bob Leonard Park. This is the upper soccer field. If y'all have been to the park and seen that area, it's getting to the point now that the turf needs to be taken up and put a new turf down. We'll probably do that really late, almost in the summertime of next year, but we need to go ahead and allocate the funding for it now.
So the life on those is that's about 10 years is about what you get out of turf?
10 to 12, right in that range. It just depends on how much activity you get out of it. We get a ton of activity out of those, all three of those fields out there. So this is just the first one to start up.
Do manufacturers warranty those for that same time period, expected life?
I don't think there's no 10-year warranty, but I think they do give a short-term warranty on the carpet itself. But after a couple of years, I think that goes away. Right.
Installer does too on the, for any defects in workmanship as far as installation.
What was that, Mayor? I'm sorry.
I said the installer does as well,
Correct.
along with the manufacturer, as far as the installation of it, as far as any defect on their end that they did wrong, so.
These really help us, though, with being able to let teams play year-round rather than just have to, when it rains, right now on our Bermuda fields, people aren't going to get on those for a few days. And in the middle of the summer, when we're trying to grow them in, they can't play for about a month while they're trying to grow in. So these allow for year-round play, and they've been really popular for us.
And I'll say too that my grandsons play in Bearden, and when the weather's bad, they come out here and practice. So.
And that's what we love to see. So the next up is Mcphee Park, our dog park and restroom building. We have planned design of the dog park in this next year's budget with construction in '24 and maybe some benches, things like that in '24 as well. But we will start the design process for that in the next year's budget. Also at Mcphee Park, and we're currently designing this right now, is 2 tennis courts with basketball goals and 4 pickleball courts. This will be a little extra money in order to construct the facility. We had some construction money in last year. We're adding a little bit more to make sure we can get that done in FY24.
How many pickleball courts will there be?
On these, there'll be 2 tennis courts with 4 pickleball courts, so that'll add to the 8 that we have currently.
Thank you, sir.
Going back to the dog park, have we looked at sponsorship on that? The reason being is Pet Safe sponsors and has built quite a few dog parks around East Tennessee, and is that something, I don't think we've ever done that in the history of the town of Farragut.
We would love to see Pet Safe do something out there at that park.
Today, Pet Safe announced the next year's Bark for Your Park program, which grants $125,000 to, I want to say, 4 municipalities. I passed that on to Mayor Williams today.
Okay.
And I forward that to the powers to be.
All right, well, great. So y'all are a step ahead of it, so thank you.
Got it in her inbox this afternoon.
She's got a lot of work on her hands in the next month or so for grant opportunities for the dog park. So we certainly will hope and pray for the best on that. Next up are our engineering projects. Think about roads, or really the big thing that we do here, and these are also big expensive projects as well. First up is the Boyd Station road improvements. This is directly related to the Grove at Boyd Station as they enter in and start their entrance down there to Boyd Station Road. This is to improve our portion of that road and get it down to Mcphee Road, so that we have $300,000 allocated for that. There's Grigsby Chapel Road corridor traffic mitigation. We did some studies last year on Grigsby Chapel Road. I think some of the aldermen right now are working on speaking to their constituents about some of those options. So we have money allocated right now to do some kind of mitigation in '23, and then another possible plan after we see what happens from that and the reaction to that in '24 as well.
Can you touch on the study?
Sure. Well, we did a study. I think CDM Smith came and presented that. They looked at the entire corridor for speed, for traffic, for safety, for accidents, things like that. I think overall, they gave a list of priorities for that study, and that's really what the board is looking at. So whether it be traffic lights, traffic signals, roundabouts, there's several things that they looked at. And so right now, the biggest thing is, if we do one, how does that impact other pieces of the corridor? And trying to slow people down, make them be a little safer as they're trying to enter and exit through that, because there's so many neighborhoods along that stretch of roadway. So that's what we're going to be working on here in the next few months, is to try to come up with what that first item may be.
And that mid-block crossing may have something to do with this as well.
Correct. So that mid-block crossing certainly could help with getting people's attention as they're trying to walk across. Because right now, the only way you're going to get across is to go down to Smith Road at a crossing or all the way down almost to Parkside Drive and Campbell Station Road with the crossing that we have there now. So we're going to look at doing that somewhere there in the middle of those two. All right, next up we have Kingston Pike pedestrian crosswalk improvements. TDOT, if you didn't know, is actually going to be repaving all of Kingston Pike from Dixie Lee Junction to Level Road this summer. So this is a great opportunity for us to come in right after they get done and do some decorative crosswalks that are really going to set apart the kind of the downtown Farragut area, I think from Campbell Station all the way down to West End Avenue. So this is part of that, is $250,000 to include that. TDOT's also going to be redoing a lot of the ADA ramping that we have up and down that Kingston Pike area and adjusting some of those, especially around the Campbell Station Road and Kingston Pike interchange right there. So we think this is going to be really great once we get this done, hopefully late summer, early fall.
How long is the repaving going to take? Do you have any idea yet?
Don't know yet. I know that we have just asked them to stay away from between the Farragut High School and past Ingalls till after July 4th is over. So I think they have agreed to do that, but not sure exactly when they'll get done. Most of that will be done at night. A lot of night work on that. I think the intersections will take them a little extra time. So if you see, something milled up for a couple of weeks at a time around the intersections, they have to put new loops in, things like that. That'll take a little extra time. Next up is our lane reassignments at Kingston Pike and Campbell Station Road. This is something we also are trying to look at, how we can get cars through there more efficiently. We've got some different design ideas from our consultants, Cannon & Cannon. So we've allocated $200,000 in order to try to fit in an extra lane or two and also look at a little bit of right-of-way in FY23 and then hopefully construct that in FY24.
Absolutely wonderful double left-hand turns going on to Kingston Pike. I can't tell you how many hours over the year that you will save me by having two left-hand turn lanes there.
We knew that would be beneficial for so that's why we
thank
wanted to
you
make
very
sure we did
much.
that. All right, Evans Road improvements. This is also a project that we have looked at extending the current improvements at the farm at Willow Creek all the way down to the west to Mcphee Road. Total projected cost of this project would be right at $2.5 million, but we would do design and right-of-way in FY23 and then construction of that in FY 2024. Next up is Union Road improvements. So this is one we've been talking about for a number of years now, and it's finally getting to the point where maybe we can start moving forward on it. Right of way, we're really close to the end of design, and in fact, right now, engineering staff is going out for an RFQ and bid process for acquisition services for the right of way. Once they get that accomplished, then over the next year, we'll be spending, as we have here on your screen, $870,000 allocated for right-of-way. That's an 80-20 split, so we pay 20%, the state pays 80%. And then hopefully, if we can get that done in the next 12 months, then construction can start sometime in FY 2024.
My hair was blonde before this started.
I had a lot more hair too, for sure, Mayor. Next up is our Virtue Road, Boyd Station Road improvements. Now, this is phase 2. This is extending those improvements that we just got done on Virtue Road now. The only thing we have budgeted and actually approved through the TPO right now is for NEPA and design in FY 2023. I think Daryl is still working hard, Daryl Smith, our town engineer, on trying to get funding for our right-of-way and construction approved in the TPO process. So that is going to be happening next year, and that will certainly take at least a year, if not longer, to get that process done. But we wanted to have money set aside to make sure we could at least start that. Next up project is our Cmaq townwide signal system upgrade. Again, this is one we've been talking about for a couple of years now. We have budgeted money for this in the past. It's been in reserves, and so now that we know this project's going to start this next fiscal year, we wanted to, from an accounting standpoint, put it in the budget. So we're putting $100,000, which is the town piece, of that project into the budget again, and then we have about $6.6 million in a federal grant to really upgrade all of our traffic signals throughout the town. So we're looking forward to getting that started as soon as we can. Our Watt Road Roundabout is a new project for us this year. We're looking at design, and the reason for design is to get the parameters of the right-of-way that it would take to go ahead and purchase the property. We're looking at, from a budgetary standpoint, not really constructing this for a couple more years, but we at least wanted to get the design and right-of-way cost underway and locked down before we get to that construction point. So we have $100,000 for design in this next year's budget.
This is a lower park entrance, by the way, for people that are not aware before this would go.
And we're looking for this also to do a little traffic mitigation and slow folks down, and also hopefully get some of those larger trucks that like to work around things to slow down as well through that area.
What's that rationale for it to be in 2026 rather than 2025 following the design work?
That's a budgetary issue for us. We have a lot of projects over the next 3 years, and so not just budget, but also time for our engineering staff to really be able to get through all those. So that's why we had to push that out to 26.
Fair enough. Thank you, David.
Jamestown Boulevard improvements, again, another study that we have currently underway. We're hoping is that once we get that study back, that we could start design of something in FY23. Right-of-way acquisition in 24, and then construction in 25. So, again, hopefully in the next month or so, we'll get some feedback from our consultant on that and be able to move forward with design next year. And the improvements, I think, we still don't know for sure, but the improvements would include some traffic signals at both ends of Jamestown that would hopefully alleviate some of the congestion that we get at Campbell Station and Kingston Pike. So overall, I think, as you can see from what I just mentioned a second ago, our overall expenditures that we're projecting over the next 6 years are around $45 million. So we've got a pretty lofty goal in our CIP over the next few years of projects to get accomplished. But we think that certainly we can get those done. Staff has got them all prioritized and trying to work hard to get them working in FY23. And then certainly priorities do change, and projects do get pushed out, and things do get shifted. And so that's why we budget in 23, and we plan for the next 5 years out after that if possible. So with that, I will be happy to try to answer any questions, but we do certainly look for a favorable recommendation to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen.
My personal observation looks pretty solid.
Thank you. The board's worked hard on this CIP the last month or so.
And you all do a great job of getting grants. That's just something that the town has done for quite a while, but it just keeps getting better and better.
Yeah, if our staff didn't work so hard and do such a great job at grant writing and the relationships they've created with our state representatives and things like that, it really couldn't go much further. And a project that's not on our CIP, but certainly one that everybody's going to want to know about and see, is what's in the state budget right now for the Campbell Station interchange at I-40. That's about a $46 million interchange. $48 million interchange. I knew you had that number, Mayor. But that's going to be a huge project. Maybe a lot of people won't like to come through Farragut for a couple of years while they're working on that. But when it's done, it will definitely be a game changer to alleviate traffic congestion in and out of Farragut off the Campbell Station interchange.
It's locked in as of today, so.
Any date in the date on it? Have you got a date yet?
They'll say 3 to 5. That's kind of the standard answer that you'll get.
Hopefully before I retire, that project will be done, Rita.
Speaking of retiring, have you talked to Sue about staying on just to write grants?
Just to do that, we may have to hire her as a consultant just to help us out.
Enter the transfer portal.
That's right. That's right.
Can you send us this PowerPoint by email?
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion
I'd second.
to recommend it to for approval of the Board of Mayor and Aldermen.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's maybe.
Approval of, item number 8, approval of utilities, any utilities at this point?
We didn't have any.
And item number 9, citizens forum. Is there anyone here Speak.
No one signed up.
No one signed up? Okay.
We've got a Boy Scout in our audience. You're working on
Visitors
a,
tonight.
on a badge? Great. Okay, good. Congratulations. We're glad you joined us tonight. I'm sure you found it very entertaining, almost as much as TikTok.
Lucky you got a shorter meeting tonight than usual.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
And a great meeting for learning about government from our,
Town administrator.
town administrator with our budgeting. This is a great lesson to see. In that case, nothing on citizens forum.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
April 21st, 2022 meeting is adjourned.
Amen.
Did you?
New grandbaby last week.
I sent you a text. I'll send it again.
I know you sent me one or the other, but I couldn't remember what you sent. And I just tried to find it. And when I put your name in my contact list, but I didn't put your email address in my contact list.
This one, she was due on Monday.
For some reason, I didn't put your email address.
2:30 in the morning. See Miss Tammy. Sunday or Monday morning.
And I met several.
She had a C-section.
Just because I screwed it
She
up.
originally had a scheduled C-section as her first child. She had complications, so they had to do an emergency C-section.
I'll send